Was it the One Piece anime one?
Yeah, it had like One Piece playing in the background. I was like, yes! I was just watching it. It was in reverse though, because it's copyright, I think.
Yeah, it was like nice quality.
It was good.
Good job.
I'm impressed with his video editing skills.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, now bring us in here. And welcome back, Startups episode 14.
Hey guys.
Today we have a special guest, Robert Cassidy, a local entrepreneur, sound technician, and pet project leader for some World of Warcraft. Robert, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Hey, you explained me better than I could.
So, as you know, you've listened to other interviews. We'll start from the beginning today. And you were telling me as we were talking earlier that you kind of started your drift into this video game realm more at a project level and getting really involved at the video game club at the U of A. So can you tell us some about your time there and how you got involved?
Yeah, so it's important to know that I have an older brother who's quite a few years older than me, and who was now graduated computing science at the University of Alberta.
Nice.
So when I went to the University of Alberta, I already kind of had an in with that crowd. Mm-hmm. So anything he was a part of, I was a part of, right? Because I was his younger brother, I just sort of followed his lead. And one thing he was a part of was the Video Game Art and Design Club.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, okay, I'll just hang out. I like things. And it was really interesting because that's kind of space, like it's a lot about playing games and talking about games and like what in the industry companies are doing that affects that sort of sphere of influence.
Right.
But on top of that, people are always working on their own things or building projects, right? There's artists and there's designers and there's programmers, a lot of programmers.
Yeah.
And people have all these ideas and like, who can help me do this? Because I like say I'm a programmer, I can't draw. Oh, well, I can draw, but I can't, create music. Or I can create music, but I can't program. Oh, well, the three of us will come together and make something, right?
Right.
So it's kind of that idea, and we just hung out in that space. But it's a really good feeding ground for ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And you came in as a programmer?
That's complicated. Yeah, I mean, my minor was in computing,
Okay.
but my major was actually in design.
Oh,
So I came in as a designer, which meant that I could do drawing, I could do writing, I could do music, I could do programming. I kind of was the jack of all trades.
Gotcha. That's pretty
cool. Which was just really nice for me to be able to be like, hey, if you need a thing, I can probably help. Not as much as someone who's specialized in it, but certainly enough to get you off the ground.
Nice. So that was kind of your small, let's say, staging point for GDX, which is Game Discovery Edmonton
Exhibition, actually.
Exhibition.
Yeah, well, that was actually an ongoing discussion, too, was the title, because we argued game discovery, game design, game development. We're like, oh, all these words have different implications.
Yeah.
So
it seems naming projects is always quite the battle. I know we feuded a couple days to name this podcast ourselves, so I sympathize with that battle with you for sure. So you said you were met by Derek Kwan and Michael Zerhoun. Am I saying that right?
Zerhoun, yeah. He's from France,
so
you can never get his name right.
I won't even try then.
Don't worry. He goes by Mike.
Perfect.
Mike was the president of the Video Game Art and Design Club. Also a computer programmer.
Right.
Also one of my brother's closest friends, so I knew him pretty well.
Nice.
And Derek and I met multiple times in the past by accident. He was the now director of GDX, but at that point he was just the guy with the idea.
Gotcha.
But Derek was a graduate of business at NATE and at the U of A, right? He was alumni. He was quite a bit older, but he liked to hang out with everybody because we were his people, right?
Nice. So can you kind of introduce our viewers to what exactly GDX is? Yeah.
So GDX certainly is and was, when I was on board with it, a space to bring sort of startups and entrepreneurs here in the city of Edmonton, independent developers who work on their own projects, a chance to come to the limelight and talk to the actual industry professionals, get feedback on their stuff, network, and engage with people that they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Right.
So when we first built the idea, it was very focused around, let's get a bunch of developers who can all work on their thing. It could be developers, artists, programmers, whatever, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing if it's focused on that goal of getting into the games industry. We'll get them to showcase their stuff. We'll get a bunch of larger companies like BioWare, Microsoft,
nice.
Things like that. They'll come in, they'll give some presentations, some panels, and they'll also walk around the show floor, look at people's projects, and give actual, tangible feedback that's relevant to the industry.
That is really cool.
That's so valuable to those people.
And it's like incredible to do that because outside of just throwing rocks at BioWare's headquarters, you can't really get their attention because they're a company.
Yeah.
Right? So having them in that space is invaluable to people.
Yeah, how often would you even get a chance to talk to people like that if it weren't for this sort of stuff?
Exactly. And so Derek was the one who sort of pioneered this idea, saying, I want a space to celebrate games and to get us a chance to network with the companies. So that was the idea going in, and we followed that very rigidly as we were planning, and we were getting panels. We sent out hundreds and hundreds of emails to different companies, BioWare included, Microsoft, like I said, Unity, things like that, to try and get some feedback. And it was quite an intense project.
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of the how the experience of trying to get those companies' attention and even just trying to grab the attention of the right person in those companies probably was a pretty big challenge.
Yeah, so the secret about networking is you have to already be networking, right? So if you want to get BioWare to come to your exhibition, you need to know someone at BioWare.
Yeah.
Right? That's the idea. Very difficult when you don't. So what we did is obviously we sent out a bunch of emails. We knew who the people were to contact. Like we knew if we needed to circumvent an HR person, who to go past them, when to talk to HR people, things like that. And then on top of that, we had a couple, I wouldn't say ringers, a couple people that were in that space already. Some people who had done QA testing for BioWare, for example, was a good example, who they were already known in their system. We had some people who were friends of people that did stuff. The guy who hosts Extra Life Edmonton was a person who actually regularly hung out with us at VGAD.
Okay.
So we had him come in, and because he was well known in that space, that helped us, and sort of like it snowballs.
Right.
The hardest step is definitely getting started, but once you go through the effort of actually sending out all these emails and following them up, then you get a couple people, you can use them as name droppers to get more people, and so on and so forth.
Damn, that's quite the process to kind of move your way through the crowd and try and really grasp their attention like that. I mean, I'm thinking right now, from my own experience talking to people at BioWare, just at the Edmonton Expo when BioWare has their little booth set up, and just trying to talk to them about kind of game development. They're very in the mindset that they're there just to show their game and just tell us how much you love our game, and that's about it. And to bring them, not only get their attention and bring them to your exhibition, but bring them there in the mindset that they're there to talk about game development and give advice, is probably just exponentially helpful to all those local developers.
Well, yeah, and it's also the reality of, and I keep using BioWare because they're an Edmonton-based company and they're my primary example.
Yeah.
They get whoever they want in Edmonton, right? The University of Alberta has a very strong program with BioWare. They'll take whoever they want from the U of A. They have the availability to take people from McEwen, to have the availability to take people from NAIT. So they weren't having an issue of recruitment. What they were having an issue of was outreach. Because it's very easy to say, oh, well, eventually, we'll just pick you up and you can come work for us. That works really well sometimes.
Right.
Right? It's a lot easier to say, hey, we do care, and we do want to show that we are encouraging the space. And what better opportunity than to do something event-driven and student-driven like GDX was.
Yeah, it's like win-win for everybody, pretty much.
Pretty much, exactly. And that's what we kind of pushed too.
And that was 2015, the first year you started.
The very first year that we started, yeah. So that was the year I joined VGAD.
Okay.
I was approached because they had already approached my brother, and he said no because he wasn't a big person like this. He wasn't that spirited. Right? He was like, I want to just do my thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will certainly be a presenter, or I'll certainly be a developer at the event, but I don't want to have to do anything with the behind-the-scenes making of. Right? But he did say, however, my brother is much more that speed. So then that's when Derek and Mike both approached me saying, hey, do you want to help us out? And I was like, yeah.
Well, that's okay. So what, sorry, go on.
Oh, no.
I was going to ask, besides BioWare and Microsoft, what other companies do you think of note that you guys have had come through?
Well, like I said, there's a lot more than I could remember off the top of my head. Beamdog was definitely there with Trent Oster. Very, very nice man. We had Unity, like I said, and we had Microsoft. Microsoft was really nice. BioWare, of course. Therefore, we also had EA. And then a lot of smaller companies and varying what I would call companies. But like, for example, I'm trying to think here. There was obviously Extra Life. The people from Anime-thon were there as well.
Oh, cool.
Right, we got into their circle of influence. The Northlands people as well.
Nice.
Right, for the K-Days and stuff like that. We were actually at K-Days twice
wicked.
in their tech panels, in their tech area.
I didn't know they had that.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then, yeah, like I said, a lot of smaller companies like Madsoft Games, which was another Edmonton-based company.
Okay.
Similar like that. And then, of course, we got funding from the University of Alberta because 2/3 of our people were U of A students. They could count as a U of A event.
Nice.
And they actually was a huge discount on the venue space because we did it the first year at the U of A.
Yeah, I was going to ask how getting the venues was going to
Well, that was really easy because they're like, well, we will give you the CCIS building, and it's all yours. So, happy days.
Oh, yeah.
But we're also like, well, that's great. Thanks for the venue. We need money, though. Things cost money. And they're like, okay, well, we got a couple $1,000s from the computing science department. We got a couple $1,000s from individual professors who were some of our panelists. At the U of A in computing science, there is a handful of profs who do the game certificate that focus and specialize on classes built for the games industry. Very, very knowledgeable, very influential, very strong networking people. We had a couple of them sort of champion our cause, and they helped fund it, and they did panels for it. And it worked out, but there was a lot of us sort of like sitting in meeting rooms and trying to figure out, okay, are you on board? If not, how much? All these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. It's probably so nice to have the feeling that your people from your faculty and those professors are down to help you out, and they kind of see your cause as a worthwhile one for everyone, and not only themselves to get involved.
Yeah, two professors in particular were very, very with it, and that was Dr. Sean Googlis, who was.
Oh yes, I took his online course there.
Yeah, and he's a very interested man in this stuff, right? And then Dr. Michael Bowling, both are sort of like the two big pioneers of the game certificate. They care a lot about their students. They care a lot about the projects.
That's awesome.
They were like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. Like, absolutely, let's try and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were telling me about it initially in our exchanges over Facebook, I was like, how have I not heard of this? And I will definitely want to come to the next expo for sure, which I see is September 15th to 17th. So that's kind of around the Edmonton Expo time, is it not?
Yeah, I'm, as I previously mentioned, GDX 2015 and 2016 I was a part of. This year I wasn't, and that's actually more to do with the fact that I have since transferred to NATE to do my sound certificate program.
Right.
So Derek is still in charge of it. They made a nonprofit organization to help get funding for it and grants. Very talented people. Definitely, I'm going to be checking out for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So, props to them for progressing it along.
All right. So 2015, 2016, how did you grow between those? I'm always curious to find, what lessons did you learn in 2015 that you changed for the next year?
So we had a paper trail for everything.
Okay.
Right, the first year we did it because we knew we'd want to do it again.
Yeah.
The first year we had at peak hours about 650 people that showed up for it. It was a free event. Right?
Nice.
650 people that showed up at its peak again. That was a constant flow of people.
Was that a surprise for you guys?
That kind of floored us.
Yeah.
We expected maybe 300. Certainly surprised the companies that came. BioWare and the like, they were definitely surprised as well.
Nice.
And it was a very interesting point for us because we're like, okay, well, how do we make this better? Right? Like, how do you improve on something that was already way beyond
success.
what you expected?
Your expectations, yeah.
And we realized, well, it was a one-day event. What if we made it a two-day event? Right? And then we had a big issue, though, of two-day event. Having a venue for 2 days is a lot of money because you're taking up a physical space that people need to use. So the U of A was very reluctant about that because they're like, well, we gave it to you for 1 12-hour day. That's fine. 2 days is a lot of days.
Yeah.
So suddenly venues became very expensive. So we're like, okay, well now we have to charge people. That's literally the only way we can afford to make this happen. And it was still very minimal. I think it was something like $5 or something.
Oh, okay. So
for each day.
Fine.
So we held it at McEwen for the 2 days, and we had a couple thousand.
Wow.
2,000-3,000 over the course of 2 days that came.
Just a quick question: what kind of like physical interactions are people doing at the expo?
Oh yeah, for sure. So like I said, developers and people brought their games forward. So people had their laptops there, had monitors, controllers. So people could actually like walk up to someone's booth and be like, "Oh, this game's kind of neat. I'll play it for you and give you my feedback right now about it." So then the developer's happy. You also get to try something that's really cool. We had a couple companies, a couple people that made board games as a living. They brought their board games there. One of them actually came out recently called Santorini. I've played it. It's very cool. But yeah, so there was like people could interact with that. If there was artwork, you could purchase the artwork. Sometimes, depending on the person. The panels, you could go to the panels and talk to people that were, say, professional voice actors. Or some of the panels were done by the big developers at BioWare. They talked about their process of how they do it, or the HR people at, say, Microsoft, and they explained how they do their hiring process.
Nice.
Very important things to know if you're in that space.
Right, yeah, those are a lot of key questions I would always...
And we had dozens of panels that were constantly going. So you could just bounce between panels and just get all the information you could ever want. And then, of course, they were recorded, so we also uploaded them to our site. So then, hey, why not just listen to it if you want to just sit out and do things?
Oh, that's awesome.
Right? So lots of stuff for people to physically do. We also had an area that was just sort of a relaxation area that was literally just a bunch of board games from tabletop.
Nice.
They just brought us dozens of board games that people could just play while they were cooling down.
Oh, wicked.
Right? So they could sit down, just play some games with their friends. And that was really, really quite nice. So we tried to make a space where people were very comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds almost like an Edmonton Expo, but very honed in on the gaming aspect and game development.
Very much so, yeah.
And, it's kind of unfortunate that it doesn't follow after the Expo, because it would be nice. I mean, I don't know the logistics of, them being okay with GDX advertising within their own Expo, kind of their turf. But it'd be nice to kind of access, you have all these pooled people that are into pop culture and geek culture and gaming alike, because obviously gaming is a big part of the Edmonton Expo, not a complete aspect of it, but it's a big one. And that's kind of how I made my entrance into pop culture. And it'd be nice to kind of target all those people and be like, hey, we have a very gaming specific version of this. If you just wait
the funny thing about the games people is that everybody knows, everyone either plays or knows someone who plays a game. Right?
It's true.
The issue is that gamers are stereotypically notorious for not wanting to leave their spaces, their comfort zones.
Yeah. Right?
And when we were targeting, we weren't just targeting people who like games. We were specifically targeting people who build games, right? Those are the kinds of people we wanted. Although we really also wanted gamers, right?
Yeah.
Very hard to get them, to convince them to come out, spend money, and do something. So what we kept saying, and we said this almost religiously, was unlike everything else that's hosted in the city, Fringe Festival, Edmonton Expo, everything else, this is for you.
Yeah.
This is your bag, right? We only do it once a year. We're student driven, so we're not doing anything crazy. We're not having like a huge profit margin here, right? We're not like commercializing and selling T-shirts and things. This is very grassroots. If you want to talk about games, you want to meet people who play games, you want to meet people who can show you how to make games, this is the space to do it. It's once a year. Come on out, right?
I like it.
Obviously, it worked, right? Really
well, exactly. Very proud of the team that sort of focused on it. Very impressed with Derek's management. Like I said, we were having meetings every week to discuss everything, and it was absolutely just a huge amount of work, especially that Derek.
Yeah, how many hours were you spending on this? Let's say per week, like as it started to ramp up.
So yeah, every person was different, right? Certainly, Derek was doing this as much as he was doing his full-time job.
Okay.
Without question. Same with Mike and with some of the other project managers, Elliot Kolp and Deanna. They were all doing this basically full-time while doing their full-time jobs.
Man.
The rest of us, we're cycling somewhere between 4 to 10 hours regularly per week.
Okay.
And sometimes it would spike up and spike down.
Right.
As we got closer to the actual event, it was sort of crunching into 15 to 20 hour work. And then the day of the event, of course, it's its own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you, obviously you're there primarily to bring independent people who are trying to gain a foothold in the game development industry and those professionals to give feedback and kind of look at the local talent. Have you heard of any instances of people, successfully coming to GDX, making a big impression, then, getting a spot on one of those companies' rosters or anything like that?
Certainly. I will keep using BioWare as my example. They met some people that they were extremely impressed with that may or may not have ended up actually working at BioWare. Some of them definitely did some stuff with BioWare. I'm specifically not naming names because I'm not going to go into that space.
Just in case don't want any inaccuracies as well.
Yeah, definitely people got hired, got cards. I certainly got a couple cards from a couple of these companies.
Cool.
That were just like so interested, like, wow, you actually helped build this. That's really cool. That shows a lot of your passion and your drive. Please let us know, contact us, things like that. So as far as networking goes, it was as successful as you could have ever wanted it to be.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So you were, for your tenure there at GDX, you were a project manager?
Well, I managed some of the projects. The project managers were the ones who were basically the managers. They were in charge of us. I was the sound technician for the second GDX, and I was I helped. My brother finally did join on, and he was the venue coordinator for power and electricity requirements, because if you have a space that has a couple hundred laptops, a couple hundred speakers, right, you're going to spike power. You need to make sure it's distributed properly, which costs money. So he did that, and I helped him organize that. I was the volunteer coordinator the first GDX, and things like that. So I sort of helped take on details that would otherwise fall beneath the surface. And I just sort of said, okay, I'll take this and I'll be responsible for it. And let's make sure the event is as good as possible. And lo and behold, it worked out pretty well.
Nice.
That's pretty good.
And you said, so for the next year, you said they started a nonprofit, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. How does that work?
So we realized that these things cost a lot of money. And as students, you'll have no justification for why you're asking for these grants. Because from any business angle who's willing to sponsor you, you don't represent anything to them.
Right.
You represent a person, and a person is untrustworthy. What is trustworthy is a nonprofit organization where they can put money into that can be audited by the government, can be kept track of, has paper trails, and is ultimately liable for anything.
Yeah.
Right? And that became very clear to us. So Derek said, okay, we need a nonprofit organization that can sort of take charge of GDX. Also, while we're at it, he was very interested in homogenizing some of these smaller groups into one nonprofit that sort of represented the entertainment place in Edmonton.
Right.
So, again, Extra Life Edmonton and Animathon and things like that, he said, they're all in a similar vein. What if we had one organization that sort of was the quote-unquote owner of that, only as far as finance goes? Right, that sort of helped keep track of all the money flow, making sure that people were there, and all these sort of details. And we end up with Walkthrough Entertainment Society of the Interactive Arts, which is a lengthy name, but basically it just boils down to Walkthrough Entertainment. And it was our logo for anything dealing with getting grants, sponsors, fundraising, volunteers. And now it become its own thing, and Derek is also on the board of directors for that as well.
Nice.
Very nice.
That's really nice to, obviously create that organization to give yourself, like you were saying, credibility, reliability, and when you're approaching those other companies, it kind of gives them a little reassurance.
Yeah, it wasn't ever about profit margins. It was always about, we need to make this legitimized so then people aren't getting cold feet. Right? And that's sort of where it came out of. It wasn't out of a sense of we can get a lot more money for a nonprofit and therefore we can, shill that out to each other and just walk away with bank. That was never even a conversation. It was always from the get-go. We need to just make people comfortable with giving us the money so then we can host a better event.
Nice. Yeah, like this is an actual thing. It's not just a few guys here and there, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
You know what? I'm getting some ideas now. It's we're talking. I'm thinking about GDX. I'm thinking about a StartUps booth. We're handing out cards. We're having a live episode. How realistic does that
Certainly
sound to
not
you?
impossible. On the contact page for the GDX site, it emails directly to the people that you'd want to email.
Right.
And if you mentioned, hey, I'm like me and my friends, we do either a podcast, or me and my friends, we make board games, or we do a huge crazy D&D adventure, whatever your niche is, you can just send that email, say, hey, would we be able to have a booth? Would we be able to do this? Would you be interested in this?
Right.
And I would be very surprised if the answer was no.
I would definitely be down, especially since given every single one of us that does this podcast are all computer science students. Obviously, I'm big into the realm of gaming and a lot of pop culture things, TV, movies, comics, all that kind of stuff. And I think it'd be really awesome. I think a lot of people there would probably, if they already listen to podcasts, it's really hard to change people to not only listen to your podcast, but start listening to podcasts. But at least people there that might listen to podcasts already say, hey, we have a podcast here that is definitely surrounded around the realm of software. We talk about some gaming here and there, but especially, we value entrepreneurs, people undertaking these projects by themselves. I'd be interested to see if they would allow us to maybe set up a booth, have a live episode, talk to some people.
It does seem cool because it seems to be open to like anybody who you can be making some game over here, and you can likely just show up and, assuming you register and all of that, you get some exposure. You can go talk to people and have people talk
it's
to
sort
you.
of you help me, I help you sort of deal.
Yeah.
Which is very important. And like I said, I've seen a lot of companies in my life. I've seen a lot of decisions made by people, and I can safely say the people who do GDX and Derek in particular, very responsible people,
Right.
very interested in helping that space, and ultimately they do it because they care about it as an entity, not because of any bottom line.
And yeah, that seems to be the one of the parts I'm liking the most of this. It's just, we love doing this stuff, and there are other people out there who love it. Let's just connect them together.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like a good idea. I might have to start making some notes and drawing up some plans to probably make that happen. Obviously, a good networking opportunity, I'd imagine, as well, which I'm always down for. And we might have to revisit our networking episode we did just a couple episodes ago to refresh on some tactics.
Exactly, yeah.
But so to go on to some of your own, well, actually, I'll stop because I always ask this question. You might have heard in our other interviews. I'm always interested in some marketing tactics that you guys used. I know you kind of talked about how you were approaching companies and getting them to come, but the people specifically themselves to get out to the event. So some marketing tactics. I know you said you had some lines that you kind of pros to gamers to get them come out, but was there any online sources or ads?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple tricks that we used and I used in particular. One thing that we really stressed was memorize your elevator pitch. Because people are very busy.
Yeah.
And they're always going to be very busy. And it's not that they want to ignore you, it's that you are not as significant as the stuff going on in their lives.
Yeah.
So practicing an elevator pitch is so important because it allows you to say what you need to say in such a way that it's not affecting the person's time, right? It gives them a chance to sit and think about it, but not affect their mentality or their disposition when they're doing everything else. So that's something that I would say is very important. When sort of thinking about it, for me, I was definitely one of the more capable in terms of speaking, right? Because, and I'm saying this mostly as a joke and somewhat not, computing science people aren't necessarily known for their ability to speak.
No.
Right? That's
we all know. Yeah,
that's just
sure.
reality.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit of a different breed, so I'm much more comfortable with presentations. I've done competitive public speaking. I know how to do it.
Right.
So I was very much a conduit for, well, if we need a sort of a face for this, how to do that. And I always kept stressing to other people who were talking, saying, everyone is just somebody, right? And what I meant by that was everyone has their story, has their interests, has their whole personality. And if you can dedicate a couple minutes to letting them tell you what they care about and what they're interested in, they'll give you as much time as you need to tell them whatever you want.
Right.
Because people want to be able to interact socially with each other. They want to have these positive experiences. And some of the best stories in your life will be, hey, I met this guy on the street, and now 5 years later I'm working for him, and it's great, right? Like, that's a great idea. And the way to do that on either side of the coin is just be a person, be interested, make jokes, have some fun. Don't take it so seriously,
Yeah.
right? Let it organically happen.
Don't set up those walls just because you don't know someone. I see a lot of people. I'm a big believer in not walking around with my headphones in and just, I'm always listening to what's going on around me, and you never know, you might miss one of those random interactions you have with someone, and obviously a networking opportunity or just an opportunity to get to know someone that's doing something really interesting that might have a ramification in your life kind of later on.
Yeah, certainly.
So I was also thinking as well. Well, actually, let's jump to the pet project, but I'll come back to it later.
Sure.
So you were at GDX. You kind of got your feet underneath you with managing projects and kind of getting things together. So you've kind of jumped in, and now you're undertaking a personal project of yours, which is a World of Warcraft audio stories. So why don't you give us an intro into what that's all about?
So what that is taking the concept of creating an audio sort of soundscape for what is otherwise not available. So in the case of World of Warcraft, and true of a lot of games, Neverwinter Nights is another good example. These games that have these rich text and these stories and these characters and these entries and these plots, they're all text. Playing a game with text is like the worst because you're not going to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Right? I've been playing games for years, and I could not tell you what half of what I read actually represents.
Yeah.
Right? Great that it's there.
Yeah.
Useless otherwise. So I thought, well, that's garbage. That's terrible. Because these stories are so interesting, and they tell such vivid ideas, and they're very universal in their theme, right? The theme of betrayal, or the theme of love, or the theme of whatever. So I said, okay, well, if I, for example, play a lot of World of Warcraft, which I do, how can I relate that to what I'm talking about here when I'm preaching? And I realized, well, a game is divided into millions of objectives and quests and tasks that the player has to perform. And you sort of go through it almost without thinking. You're like, oh, yes, kill X of Y and get this.
Right.
Deliver this note to the person 5 feet away. Sure. But it becomes so much more interesting if you actually understand the reason. And recently, Blizzard was really good in their latest expansion, Legion, with adding extra voice acting just to random mobs.
Yes.
And that made it so much more immersive. So then the idea of, well, what if you took all of the quests in the entire game and you voice acted and you made it believable, you made it real, tangible. Suddenly you have a good story. But what if you go one step beyond that? What if you add the music of the zone? What if you add the ambience? A crow flies by and caws at you because you're in the middle of an open prairie, right? What if when you're going to a town, you hear the sound of people building and people walking around and people having side conversations? What if you're going through a capital city and you hear the marketplace and you hear horses on cobblestone? What if you made it so immersive that it can stand as its own item? Suddenly, you have something that's so much more tangible, relatable, believable, and it's already there, right? The story's already there. People are just now get to experience it.
It's true, and from my own experience playing that game as well, sometimes I make the effort to stop and read the quest text just because it has you make a more personal connection if you know the lore, you know what's going on, kind of the setting, which is the case with any kind of medium with, movies, games, and books in general. If you kind of know a little backstory and know what's going on and you're not just kind of, for a movie example, just watching two guys fight, but you don't know why they're fighting or anything, it doesn't have as much levity as it would as you know what's going on. So once I heard that you were doing these audio stories to kind of bring that skipped over text, and as we were discussing before this podcast starts, literally thousands and thousands of lines of text that get skipped over by players and they don't know what's going on. It's important to bring it to light because it gives the game, which is already so rich in lore, kind of brings that to the forefront.
And we're seeing something really cool right now with, say, Game of Thrones having such positive world building.
Yeah.
Right? So believable. People are so interested in these details that would otherwise have fallen by the wayside are now becoming, coming to the forefront. So it became really interesting to me. In the recent one that I had built, which was for the zone Westfall, in the actual context of the story, Westfall is a pretty terrible place. There are bandits that are kicking people out of their houses. People are losing their lives. People are destitute. They're homeless. There's this general vibe of we can't live here, and it's our home. We're losing our home, right? And there's this underlying subtext of where is the military, right? We are the main breadbasket of this human population. Where is the military, right? And it's prevalent throughout the zone. So when you actually get a chance to hear the audio story, you actually get to hear people saying constantly, well, I hope that by getting rid of these bandits, we can live once again. And it's constant. It's every single quest mentions how destitute it is. And you get that strong vibe of, wow, I'm actually making such a change in this zone by questing through it. I'm not just the adventurer, I'm the hero, right? And I feel like that is such a impressively powerful moment to say, oh, yes, yeah, you're killing, basically committing genocide on these bandits, right? 15 of these bandits, 15 of these bandits, so on and so forth. And that's just okay, so yeah, I'm a mass murderer, cool. But then in the context of the story, it's no, you are affecting the most positive change this place has ever seen.
Right.
And you are helping them understand they don't need the military if they just stand up for themselves. Right? And later, when you get to, say, Cataclysm and that zone gets revamped, it follows that story, and it doesn't feel so disconnected as to what happened before to what happens now. Because suddenly you realize they did affect their own change. They did do their own thing because I showed them how to do it.
Oh, so it brings a whole nother depth and levity to the game.
I've never played World of Warcraft or touched any of that, but I'm already totally zoned into this story. And I can't imagine if you're already playing it, how effective that could be.
Yeah, and it was interesting to me because when I started building this project, I divided sections into 4 zones. The human 4 zones, the orc 4 zones, so on and so forth. And for the human 4 zones, I said, okay, what's the overlying story? Well, in the first place, Elwyn Forest, people are at their happiest. They've got some grievances, but they're nothing too serious, right? You get to the next place, Westfall, and people are quite destitute. They're running out of their homes. Then you get to, say, the next place, Red Ridge Mountains, and it's not people that are destitute. It's now they're under attack by invading forces. That's another layer of seriousness. And then you get to the last zone, Duskwood, and the entire idea of things are getting worse as I progress just skyrockets. The dead are coming out of their graves. These people are living in a place perpetually nighttime. They're paranoid. They're freaking out. Everything that's going wrong is going wrong right now. And you get this strong sense of, in the very first zone, the military, they're not here yet. Second zone, where are the military? Third zone, we are going to lose without the military. And the last zone is, we've already lost. Now we're just trying to recover from it, right? And you get such a strong sense of, wow, this place is so much more detailed than I realized.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, World of Warcraft, I should say Warcraft in general, not just World of Warcraft, has a huge lore and kind of history behind it already. And, being able to really dive into that, I think World of Warcraft is probably holds the biggest chunk, I guess, of that universe, of the lore within itself has come out of it being, I think, the longest running game of kind of that universe and games of that. And you've just described just a small string of zones, and what we were counting up the zones just before this was close to 100 zones, we were saying.
Well, and yeah, over the course of the many expansions they have, it's a couple hundred zones.
It's unreal,
right? That's ridiculous.
And with so many expansions, you would think Blizzard would have tried to, press for some more. And sounds and
it's funny. This
packages.
guy, I released all of these audio stories on Reddit, and this one guy on Reddit had just the funniest comment, and it was just, "How in 13 years are you the first person to think of this?"
Yeah,
right. And I just sat back and I was like, "You're totally right. I've seen people make add-ons for this game that make the questing experience more interesting, more exciting. I've seen people make machinima and videos that delve into it. I've never seen anybody." Just make an audio.
Just try to make it better.
Yeah, just take what's already there and make it more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like that a lot.
And to be fair, I guess Blizzard has done a little more cutscenes, and the questing has been a little more interactive.
Yeah, these zones were made in 2004.
Yeah,
right? I'm gonna cut them some slack here.
Yeah, exactly.
They made WoW making Warcraft 3. Sure, I'll give you that.
Yeah,
and their storytelling is so much better now.
It is.
But their storytelling was great back then. They just didn't have the proper tools to make it come to the limelight. You know?
Absolutely. And even before you guys were here, we were talking about the logistics of undertaking this with Blizzard, and it would require a lot of resources, people, and money especially.
Just throwing numbers around, it would cost a couple $1,000, like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to do this.
Oh, man.
Because that's how much it would take to charge voice actors. It would take that much to pay the audio designers, the sound engineers to build it, and for what? For free? I don't know.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be a paid add-on or anything. They wouldn't make any money from it.
No.
And at the end of the day, they are a company.
Yeah.
You know, they have investors and all that. So once you started this pet project, how many people did it initially start off with?
Well, there was originally just me.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the designing of it goes, it's still just me. But I had two male voice actors, one female voice actress. Then I added another male, then another female, and then that was my core team.
Right.
Okay.
And then they're the still ones I go to now, and they're prevalent throughout most of the zones that I do.
Right.
But now, because it's much more interesting, people are saying, "Hey, can I help? Can I do this?" I've had people on Reddit message me directly and say, "I want to be a part of this. Can I help?"
Nice.
Or I've mentioned it in side conversations, or my friends mention it to their friends. And now I'm going to the Citadel downtown. I'm meeting with professional actors who want to help voice act it.
Damn.
Right? It's incredible. And that works for me because that just means the quality gets so much better.
Absolutely.
Right? As opposed to, say, my friend Nolan talking to himself 6 times in the zone, which happens. Now suddenly there's hundreds of voices and hundreds of characters and inflections, and you can actually start to recognize, oh, this actor does this kind of character.
Oh,
This actor
I
does this
see.
kind of character, and so on and so forth.
That's really interesting. I mean, I've obviously for our viewers and for Peter, obviously you're not too familiar with World of Warcraft, but the game has been around just over a decade now, or a decade?
It's coming on to 13 years.
13
time,
years.
yeah.
So people have grown up playing this game. I mean, it's been with them for a long time. It's obviously incredibly popular. Like to play one game.
Incredibly addicting too.
Yeah, to play one game for 13 years straight is unprecedented. So it's no surprise to me that people are popping up everywhere wanting to get involved. Like the amount of kind of heartfelt nostalgia that it comes with World of Warcraft, especially when you're talking about vanilla content and early content, is immense. And it makes it's no surprise to me that people want to help make this a thing. And do you, I was going to ask, do you have a timeline for how long do you think it'll take to kind of at least maybe get halfway, let's say?
Sure. Yeah. So from the second I start recording my voice actors, so this is completely omitting their schedules. If they, at my beck and call, came over anytime I needed them to do their lines, it would take about 2.5 weeks to do each zone at its complete fastest.
Right.
2.5 zones per zone, roughly. So that's not realistic, but let's go along with that. To get even halfway done this entire project would take at least a couple years.
Damn.
To get even halfway. Of course, though, you get faster.
Yes.
You get better. You get templates. People want to help you. You can offload some of the work, right? So as you progress, it gets easier also because Blizzard gets better at storytelling.
That's true.
Right? And suddenly it's a lot more easy to handle these sort of issues because you're not dealing with the thank you, Paladin, for being a Paladin. Like, that's a weird sentence, but it works in the context of the game because you don't notice that shit.
Yeah, exactly.
But suddenly, later, it just makes a lot more sense. The sentences flow better for the voice actors. They can say things that don't sound clunky or awkward.
Yeah.
'Cause it's like things that you write are not things that you say.
Yeah.
Right? So suddenly they can say things easier and better. That's faster. They make less mistakes. Less time for me to sift through and find things. Less time for me to fix it. Less time for me to put effort in.
Yeah, the process definitely gets streamlined as you go. And it probably helps that, like you said, Blizzard is improving their storytelling. I mean, I think it was just last year they announced they still have at least 10 years worth of content lined up. So it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
And I'm doing this as a free project because I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
And, of course, I'd like to work for Blizzard in their sound department. That would be my idea. However, I'm doing this regardless of anything else. I do this because I care. And I care that the community cares, right? And if I can provide Blizzard with something for free that makes people want to come back, it makes people interested, and makes it so then, say, Blizzard doesn't have to deal with the idea of private servers because people are getting their nostalgia fixes from this.
Right.
Well, isn't that better for everybody?
It's true. It is. I mean, within the whole Nostalrius server issue, there was a lot of back and forth between that group and Blizzard, and no one likes to see kind of them bickering at each other, because obviously if we all had our way, like, Blizzard would just have their own, and everything's just clean cut, like.
But if for whatever reason the politicking doesn't allow that, at least I can provide something along this line that actually does work for Blizzard.
Yeah,
and works for the community.
Absolutely. So, well, I'll jump back. Actually, what I was going to say before, and it kind of was relating when you were talking about computer science people coming out, networking, and talking. I was going to share our experience. Me and Peter did a software engineering class where you had to make an Android app.
Oh, I'm familiar with that.
301? Okay.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
So we had our ending presentation come up, and of course we're the last group to go. So we're sitting there, we're looking at all the presentations, and some of the apps were really, really nice, for sure. All the presentations horribly run, like oratory skills, format, you name it. So I'm getting excited because I'm like, hey, we're going to smoke this, because me and Peter are good at presenting. We had the live demo as well as a Prezi alongside it to kind of show and pinpoint some things rather than us just trying to explain everything on the spot. We had kind of like not rehearsed lines, but a rehearsed flow, like I passed it on to this guy and he talks about this page. And then even though our app ended up, of course, breaking like 30 seconds before we go up, which is
as it does.
Classic. I was like, well, I'm getting the full software engineering experience right now. So it worked for like the first couple minutes of our presentation, but we were able to give a good enough oratory presentation that we actually got like way above the average on presentations. It was funny that even though our app didn't work, it goes a long way when you find those group of guys that are in computer science that have kind of those oratory and people skills to make presentations in that kind of sea of very introverted, and maybe introvert isn't the right word because I'm introvert myself, but just being able to get out of your comfort zone.
One of the largest fears people have is fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
Right? And I understand that without feeling it. I've never been afraid of public speaking. In fact, more people makes me more comfortable. The most I've ever presented to was just shy of 1,200. Like, I understand where it comes from without feeling it. And sort of whenever someone asks me, how do you get more comfortable with public speaking? How do you get there? I always just say, you just have to find your way of being relatable.
Right.
For me, I can make a mistake while I'm presenting, and I know how to correct it through humor, through self-deprecation, and like making fun of myself, through making some sort of distraction, whatever. I know how to work around it. So I can go up and I can and this has happened to me, where my presentation has failed. I have had blue screens happen. I've lost information. I've had my apps don't work. And I'm very smart about saying, and of course, if you can close your eyes and you can visualize how it works, people start laughing because they're like, yeah, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
They're humored. They're laughing. They're at ease. You're at ease.
Yeah.
Right? Find a way to say, okay, what is the worst case that could happen? Oh, I show up without my underwear. Then just rock it. Just own that space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's just how it works.
And that's, I think, how I tried to handle our experience. I cracked a few jokes at the beginning, got some laughter from the TAs and the prof, and kind of made it a little lighter. And it was like, what, it's not working out, but that's okay. We had our presentation. Everything's fine. We're not freaking out, so it looks a lot better. Absolutely.
And I think one problem that there is with public speaking and people's fear of it is most people never really get to do that. In your entire lifetime, unless you're running game
That's
conferences.
actually extremely funny. I've given presentations to my former high school on this exact topic.
Oh, yeah?
Talking about, well, what is the issue? Where is the disconnect, right? And it boils down to you get lack of experience. You get lack of availability to do it. If, say, for example, a lot of teachers are now accommodating adding computing as part of the curriculum in schools, right? At a younger age. You get more exposed to it. You're more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Well, it's true of anything. Public speaking is a learned practice. Anyone can learn how to do it. You have to practice. You have to be comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
If you just made it, in high school growing up, you have to do presentations. And they suck because the class is not engaged. And you can tell. You feed off of that. They're looking at you bored. You're looking back at them scared. They feed off you. You feed off them. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Stop having students make presentations on shit they don't want to talk about.
Exactly.
Give them a chance to talk about something they're interested in that's relevant somewhat to the topic, right? If you're doing social studies and you're currently learning about the Napoleonic era and you're doing presentations, let students present on just history. It doesn't have to be the exact thing you're talking about.
Right.
Let them pick, let them talk, and they'll do fun.
100%.
I
Yeah.
completely agree with that, and I think that's why doing the presentation on my app or anything that I'm either super passionate about or I know a lot about, it is immensely easier to talk about it when you actually are interested and care about it, because you're trying to not just get through the presentation, talk about it, but you're trying to purvey it and portray it, and educate them, and you really want to get it across so that people are interested in themselves.
If a small group of people can do public speaking comfortably, then a smaller group of that can do improvisation properly, right? It gets smaller and smaller. When you ask people to give presentations on stuff they don't know, you're making them improvise.
Yeah.
Because they don't know the content. They're not planned, they're not articulate, they don't know what to do. An incredibly small niche of people can improvise speeches. Right? Look at any of the great orators in the history of the world. They plan their presentations. They practice. They know what they're talking about. Right? It's not a guessing game for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So with students, and the reason they're so afraid of public speaking is because they're afraid they don't know. Right? So stop trying to make them guess.
Yeah.
Let them talk about things they know.
That's
and
true.
It'll be okay.
And yeah, that all comes back to your GDX, because you get to practice, you get to present to all these people who swing by your booth, all those developers. You can get some practice on that, especially, and if you're there, you're interested in games.
Yeah, it's like, how do I get past the in-person interview for a technical position at a gaming company? Well, what if you actually got a chance to talk to the people who do that thing and say, what are 5 things you notice that people don't do right? Oh, it's A, B, C, D, E. Well, now you know.
Yeah.
You're not guessing anymore.
Yeah, exactly. This sounds like a good episode topic, public speaking, and I would be remiss if we didn't have you come back and be a guest speaker on that episode.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that, people want to do better at the things they're afraid of, but they're afraid of it, so they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
I get that. The reason I go back to my old high school and I present on this kind of stuff is because I want to eventually get to a space where I can walk into, say, a classroom and see people do presentations and have people laughing and smiling and positive. I don't like the idea that it's dreadful. It can be fun if we make it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And
It is.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is too bad that it's not really looked at as kind of a skill that might be useful. It's just kind of an extra thing that people worry about for a few days and then off to the next thing.
It's true.
Practice it more and that sort of stuff. I'm only able to public speak a little bit because when I was younger, I played music for people in concerts or whatever. And so I got practice. Otherwise, I'd be a terrible public speaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. One thing one of my teachers did for me was we half our class was missing because they were on a leadership camp. And the other half of our class was here. And he's like, well, I'm not going to do teaching because, half you are missing.
Yeah.
He's like, so we're going to try something different. He said, okay, we're going to practice doing presentations because I know you guys are already garbage at it. And we're like, yeah, you're right. He's like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Everyone write down one topic about something school-related. Just something school-related, one topic. Could be a math subject, could be a question, could be something, whatever. Doesn't matter. Everyone write down one thing. Everyone puts in a hat. Okay, you draw from the hat. All right, you have 1 minute to think about this topic, and you have 1 minute to present. Get as close to the time as you can. He said all the stakes are off because you all are having to you all don't know what you're talking about first.
Right.
Right. So of course I went first because that's life for you, and I got the topic, and it said favorite math equation. Right?
God.
Like what a weirdly specific thing to talk about. But
that
what was
in.
funny is that I looked at it and I just said, okay, I'm ready. And my teacher's like, are you sure you don't want a minute to prepare? I'm like, no amount of preparation was going to help me. I was like, I'm just going to do it. Right? So I went up and I just talked about pi and digits of pi and things like that, and how interesting it is that, and all this gargly goop. And it was very funny because I just said to the entire class, well, my topic is favorite math equation, which I don't think anyone here has one. And everyone started laughing, right? They're like, yeah, no, And I was like, so I'm going to talk about something that's kind of related. Here's this. And I just kept making it humorous, and people kept having fun with it. And then the next person went after me, and they did the same format I did, and it killed, right? And so on and so forth, because, it was like we had that space to make mistakes and make errors because none of us expected it.
Yeah.
And we knew none of this was good. So whatever, we made it work.
Absolutely. It's always nice to see someone put on a really well-performed presentation. I mean, just because if you have experience, obviously, doing them, and I think most people, I would say generally most people do, it's you kind of, I always have a sigh of relief, like, oh, like, you did a good job. Like, thank God it wasn't a train wreck, because I hate watching those like awkward pauses and those really bad presentations because I feel bad for them. Like I really do.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's something that helps to remember if you're worried about performing. It's that the audience also wants you to succeed, right? They're on your team. It's not if I mess up, they're gonna hate me. It's they're cheering for me, right?
Yeah, and it's exactly that. And it's other little tactics like people when they present, they lock eyes with people. Don't do that, right? If you're going to look at someone, look just above their eyebrows. And just sweep your eyes. Never focus at one place. Keep sweeping, right? Because you'll never lock eyes with someone, which means you'll never forget what you're about to say. And people still think you're looking at them in the eyes because they're looking up at you, not down at you. So they're thinking that you're connecting with them, when in reality, you're just making sure you don't make a mistake. Both people win.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's all about little things like that.
So you go back to your high school and do these presentations on public speaking, you were saying?
Yeah, and I'll talk about whatever the school wants me to talk about because it sort of just depends on the subject. Right? I talked recently about having phones in school, and that like controversial topic. They had me come in to talk about my experiences as an alumni of the school and going into university, what that transition is like as far as schooling goes, and how having your phone on you all the time is and isn't great.
Yeah, it's
Right?
true.
I was relatable because I said right from my first sentence that I said to all the students was, so I'm going to talk about phones in school, and before you roll your eyes at me, I want you to know that I'm actually going to turn my phone off right now because otherwise I will look at it. Right? And I pulled my phone out and I like turned it off and then I just dropped it. Right? And I'm smart with my phone. And it's safe and it's sometimes in a case. But I just dropped it. And that caught their attention instantly. Like, oh, what's he doing? And I like dropped my phone and I just said, that was the hardest thing I've ever done today. Like that's single-handedly the hardest thing, dropping my phone. Because I love my phone. I love how useful it is. Said, but I'm going to talk to you. I want to make it clear. I don't want this. And then I kicked it away. Right? I had their attention.
Right.
And then I thought, okay, he's going to make this humorous. I'm on board. And then I just started telling them, I'm not going to come off here on a pedestal and say I'm a great student. I was pretty good, but mostly because I was very good at not doing my work and getting away with it. Right? Like I was really sort of sneaky like that. Said, going into university, I got crushed in my first class because I kept looking at my damn phone.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention because no one was telling me to pay attention. Right? And I told them this story and suddenly it became so much more relatable because they're like, yeah, he's like us. Like your teachers tell you don't look at you won't always have a calculator in your pocket. Yes, I will. Right?
Yeah.
Like, yes, I do.
Exactly.
Better calculator than the TI-84s or whatever, right? So like it became relatable, and once you connect with someone, it's very easy to talk.
And that's not the. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's not the first. That's not the first project you've done for your school. As before, you were saying you and your friends did a living wall project, and you're currently working in a company that does that.
Yeah, that was mostly an accident, and I say that quite fondly. I had two friends at the school who were very eco-friendly, very green people.
Right.
And they were working with a teacher to make the school a bit more self-sustainable as far as food goes. Because Jasper Place High School, the school I went to, has just around 2,500 students and staff.
Big school.
Big school. A lot of money to cost for lunches, right? If you have a cafeteria, a lot of money you're losing.
Yeah.
So how can we fix that? So we had already built this sort of permaculture system where we had fish that we grew, and we would, eat the fish, and then we would take all the compost, we'd plant it outside, grow some flowers, so on and so forth, right? We built this sort of self-sustaining system, but then finally this teacher said, what if we built a living wall that had herbs on it? And they grew herbs, and we just harvested the herbs, and they grew back because it's a living wall, and it's aesthetically pleasing, and on top of that, we got to use this thing, right? That was the idea. So two of my friends sort of took the idea and was like, okay, let's do it. And then they realized that they're two people, so 3 is better than 2. So they got me because they knew that I was very committed to spending time after school. I did a lot of volunteering, a lot of stuff like that. Nice. So I was the kind of person who was willing to sacrifice all of my weeks to do it.
Yeah.
And they said, let's build this thing. So we built the design document. We bought all of the equipment, and we bought all the tools, and we got the herbs, and we studied, and we learned everything. We took, they took biology classes specifically for this knowledge.
Oh, really?
And we built it, right? And it took a long time because we were 3 people. I would not recommend building a living wall in a high school with 3 people. 4 is a better number. But we built it, and sure enough, the school started making a lot more money on lunches because they weren't constantly having to buy things that we were making using the leftovers they were already had, right? We took the compost and we made it into some nutrient-rich soil with worms. The worms got really fat, we fed them to the fish. Fish got really fat, we fed them to the students. Students had leftover compost from that, we fed it back to the worms, right? All this soil, leftover soil, went to the plants. The plants were really happy because it was very high on nutrients. Plants bloomed. We cut the plants, so on and so forth, right?
Such a cycle, and I mean, that's unreal. I never even knew. I've been to Jasper Place a couple times. I used to play basketball against them back when I was in high school. When was this this wall built? I'm curious.
2014.
2014. Okay, so it would have been after I graduated in 2012, so that would have been long after.
2014, and it was built in a place called the Global Cafe, which was a volunteer outreach program inside the school.
Okay.
I see.
Right, and it's since been taken down because they renovated the place, but half of the wall still exists in the kitchens at JP.
Oh,
Nice.
okay, I see.
Right now it's a bit more direct.
So how you're working for a living wall company yourself now, correct?
So I work for a company called Marine Aquaria, which, as the name suggests, they do salt and freshwater tanks. And I was brought on specifically so they could expand into living walls.
Okay.
Right, because they knew that I had done this thing. And yeah, it's been pretty interesting. We recently built a wall in a place called the Free Building downtown, which is next to the Shaw Conference Center.
Nice.
We maintain living walls all around the city, and a little bit outside in Summerside and Leduc. And it's really cool because we're noticing this huge trend where people want green, right? They want living things in their spaces. Aquariums are very calming, right? Very relaxed. That's why dentist office have them. Living walls are talking pieces, and they're air filters, and they're sound filters, right?
Mm-hmm.
They remove sound pollution. All of these things that they do that are incredible, and they're not that hard to maintain. Hard to build, sure. That's why you get a company to make it.
Right.
But to maintain, they're plants. You have an automatic water system, and you don't have to water them. You got to cut off dead leaves. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's very few because it's a very well-built system.
Gotcha.
Right? So suddenly, it's so easy to maintain. It's so good for you. The PR is incredible because, oh, look, you're going green. Right? All these things. And at the end of the day, I did this as a kid just because I could.
Yeah.
And now I do it for a living, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
That's sweet.
So you're telling me that you're kind of also involved in the business aspect of growing the company, along with Joshua Jones. That's the,
so the Grand Poobah is Joshua Jones. It's his company, but he's currently in the process of rebranding it to accommodate the fact that we're now adding living walls and things. It's no longer about Marine Aquaria because we no longer deal with exclusively Marine Aquaria. Now we are adding plants and ecosystems and living spaces. So I was brought on because I was a design student. I could help redesign a lot of the things. I can do photographs. I can do sound design for him. I can do rebranding. I can, of course, do the living walls and talk shop about it. And on top of that, I'm a good presenter.
Right.
So I can be brought to meetings and not make an ass of myself.
Gotcha.
Perfect package.
So obviously,
I think so. Josh, if you're listening to this, I appreciate all the work you do.
No, it sounds like you're a huge aspect and a big pickup for Josh. Absolutely. How did he find you per se to work for his company?
Sort of that networking thing all over again.
Oh, yeah.
My parents are part of this thing called the American Wine Society. They've been for many years. And they have a lot of fun conversations about me because I've lived a very varied life, including some dumb things I've done and some smart things I've done and all kinds of things, right? So I'm an easy conversation piece for like side conversation. So my mom offhandedly mentioned that I built a living wall several years ago, and Josh was present at that dinner table, and he was like, oh. And then he was like, he started grilling my mom, like, what's the name of your son? How did he do it? What tools did he use? What did he build? And she's like, I don't know. This was supposed to be a side conversation, and I'm having a full one. So she gave him my email, and he emailed me like a couple hours later, and we just started talking. And then I went and met him in person, and then he offered me a job, and
Oh, mom comes through.
Yeah, and she was, when I talked to her, she was like, yeah. She came home that night. She handed me a card. She was like, so I had a weird night. I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, I was telling someone about your living wall, and you should talk to Joshua Jones. He wants to do that. And I just turned to her and I said, I don't. Why were you talking about me? Right? Like there's a disconnect there anyway. And so we had a lot of fun about it. But that's networking, right? People know people. Always just do things that are somewhat interesting that you like to do, and people will talk.
Absolutely. So staying on the topic of your family, you were mentioning me as well that you kind of have a history of entrepreneurialism in your family as well. Why don't you kind of shed some light on that?
Yeah. So my grandfather on my mom's side, he used to work for a big contracting company, and he was one of their salesmen, right? And if you ever talk to him, like you can tell their salesman runs right through his bones, right? And he was very, very skilled, but it required him to drive to Calgary a lot, which meant he had to be away from his wife, my grandmother, and later his daughter, my mom. So he didn't like that. He also didn't like the fact that the people he was working for were incompetent. He didn't like that the system that they were using was stupid. And all these usual reasons people end up doing their own companies is because they see a flaw and they want to fix it.
Yeah.
So he finally said, well, what if I was the distributor? Right? He's like, what if I was the one who distributed all the stuff, because I know what I'm talking about, I know what's proper, and I'm not going to be, hedging people and giving them obscure things that they need to buy. Oh, you don't have this kind of wood because, this wood is this, because you're trying to make a sale.
Yeah.
What if you just sold them the wood because this is the best wood, period, full stop. So he said, okay. So he quit that job and he started up his own one in his garage. And
as they all start out.
As they all start. God, that was a long time ago. What's that? 50 years ago?
Oh,
Because
damn.
they just celebrated their 50th anniversary this year.
Man.
Oh, wow.
My grandpa has since retired, as has my grandmother. They both worked for the same company, right? His. My dad's now the owner.
Okay, nice.
His brothers are his co-workers and do a lot of the management.
Okay.
And they're going strong here in the city. And in fact, 2/3 of the buildings here built in the city at some level were helped built by my grandpa's company.
That's awesome. That's an unreal story.
Oh, yeah.
To hold a company for 50 years is hard. I mean, to grow and build, there's a lot of small businesses out there, and a lot of them stay small.
Yep.
So it's always nice to hear a story like that to come up in, especially when you're dealing with construction and renovation stuff. There's so many large companies that people kind of turn to just because that reliable name, and to get a foothold in that is nothing short of remarkable for sure.
And my dad and my grandpa have been very careful about at any point with any of these companies that build things, you mention their company, the company Burke Interior Systems. They know who that is, and they've had a positive relationship with them.
Yeah.
Right? Because my grandpa stressed about customer quality and relations. My dad is very strict on that. He makes sure people are happy and satisfied with the work. And in return, he does things that are fundamentally good. When we had the huge fire in Fort McMurray recently, my dad was one of the companies that shipped out stuff to rebuild the hospital. So then they could get people to come back in, because the government said no one's allowed in Fort McMurray until the hospital's rebuilt.
Right.
So my dad shipped huge truckloads of material straight there and had it rebuilt as fast as possible so people could come live their lives again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And he wasn't doing it to make a sale. He was doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's awesome. That's an unreal story.
Now, I'm wondering, have you picked up anything from that sort of history you have in your family in your own projects? I know I'm already picking out a few qualities that I notice in yours that they have, but are there any other ones? Any lessons you got from that?
Yeah, so I've worked for my dad's company as an estimator and as a worker, right? And certainly one quality that is very strong through both sides of my family, my mom's side and my dad's side, is take the time to do it right, right? It's so easy to just say, oh, this is good enough. The second you say good enough, you slap yourself in the face and you say not good enough. You keep going, right? Very important quality. And then something that has been impressed onto me, but never through like an actual dialogue. It's something that's sort of subtext, is treat people honestly, treat people fairly. And like I said, people are just people. Let them tell you their story.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the company. Enjoy the space.
I'm super a believer in that. I did a short stint for half a summer at doing quotes for 310 dump.
Yep.
And it was the same way, you know, I just was straight up with people like, you know what, if you do this, it's probably going to cost less. You know, they have a situation, well, you know, they basically made me quote on space rather than weight. So I was like, you know what, you got to deep freeze. Why don't you put that printer or whatever in the deep freeze? I'll lower the price for you. Like, just be genuine with people and just don't treat them so much as an opportunity to make some money, just as a person, and just give them a good
And it's funny because, you know, you hear that quote all around the world, you fail way more times than you succeed. You know, it's true. And we all know it's true. Mm-hmm. But more important than you fail more times than you succeed is own your mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes working for companies. I've made errors. I've made, you know, I've done things wrong. And the very first thing I say is, here's why I did it this way. I'm sorry that I made a mistake. How can I make it better? Every single time. Because I will learn from that. The person feels good because you own up to it.
Yeah.
And you explain why you did it so then they can correct the mistake. Right? There's not a confusion about, oh, I did this wrong because I was tired. I would say, I did this because of this logic. I made the mistake. I'm sorry. How can I fix it?
Yeah.
The customer's never wrong, basically.
I've also worked at Canadian Tire, and I've also worked at Save on Foods. The customer can be wrong.
Yes.
But you never let them know.
But the customer can be wrong and still win.
Yes.
That's the important thing.
He always has to win.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have to let people gain the high ground because that makes them feel good, and when they feel good, they'll do things, right?
Absolutely. They'll buy that air humidifier and go away so you can get back to doing whatever you're doing. And so you're working in Canadian Tire, as I did for my first job as well.
They're all human qualities, right? People like being told things properly and like being honest and like having things being legitimate. Just feed off that, right? Nobody's here to say, oh, screw you, I'm here because I'm angry. And I know some people like that. But there's something else going on, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm angry at you. Not because it's you, but because something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't take it personally.
Absolutely. Well, there's some knowledge for our viewers. If you're, you know, a salesperson working in retail or have to do a presentation, be genuine. I think that's a big takeaway.
Now, I'm noticing there's like a theme along all these projects you have. It's you see something, you have something you're really interested in, or you see something you want to improve, and you just go in it not for any sort of money or glory, but just because you like it or you want it to be better. I'm sure there are tons of people out there who have those ideas. Like you were saying, you know, this game's been out for a while. Why didn't anybody think of this sooner? For the people out there who have ideas like that, do you have any advice for them on how to get started on their own projects?
Yeah. You don't need the proper tools to do the job, right? If you're saying, I'd like to do it, but I don't have X, Y, Z, that's not a reason. The reason is you're scared to start. And you know what? We all are. I'm terrified of starting something new, right? It's much easier for me to do something that I know and something that's reliable than to do something that's different. Mm-hmm. But have no excuse for yourself. Be honest with yourself, right? You can lie to the world. Don't lie to yourself, right? If you say to yourself, I'm just scared to start, that's great. Because you know what? We all do really poorly when we start, and then we do excellent. And people only care about when you do something excellent because people feed off of positive energy, right? When I did the audio stories, I didn't know how to start any of it. I was like, well, how do I do this, right? And sure, I had sound design knowledge, but 2 years ago I didn't, right? Mm-hmm. I just did a class one day and then taught myself all the stuff because I thought it was interesting. If you do things for you reasons, it doesn't matter, you know, how long it takes, how much effort it is, what the quality is. Mm-hmm. You're doing it for you reasons, and then you'll just refine it because, you know, practice makes perfect.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I definitely had, I got that. I was close to starting an irrigation company a few summers ago as well, and it's kind of, you definitely have that cold feet, and as soon as you jump in and, you know, you do your first job and whatnot, it's, you just have to at least try. You got to give it a shot. And even with now, the startups are developing an app right now too, and I have moments where I'm like you kind of step back and you're like, is this something I should be doing? Do I have, you know, the people and the materials, and can we do this? But then you always got to give yourself this reassurances, you know, what's the harm in trying?
It's okay to be unsure.
Yeah.
It's okay to be unsure with yourself. It's okay to be unsure with all the things you're doing. We all have doubt, right? It's the most common thing among people. We all have doubt. But the people who have doubt and don't act on it, they're the people who regret later. Yeah. Because, you know, I've done stupid things, and I'll say right now in recording, I've put diesel in my octane premium car. I have totaled my own car. I have lost a wallet and a pair of keys in a river, and then next week I lost my passport while I was no longer in my home city. I have done the stupid things. I'm glad I do. Because when I tell them to people, they relax as like, okay, he's dumb too. He's dumb too, but he can do cool things. Well, if a dumb guy like him can do cool things, why can't I? And that's great.
We're all
Absolutely.
capable on some level, and
My wallet is currently lost right now, so I know it.
Nice.
You're having. We need you to learn from this experience.
I know.
Take this advice. Well, are there any last few questions for Robert here while we have him?
Well, I just want to say it's just been insanely amazing to talk to you. I've like learned so much, and I've heard about all these projects that I do really want to check out.
Absolutely. You will definitely see me, and I'm sure I'll see you at GDX coming up this year. I'm super excited.
More than certain, yeah.
Absolutely, and hopefully you will see a StartUps booth. I'll probably get working on the logistics of getting that set up right after we end off here.
And I really want to see you. This is kind of out of left field. I want to see you in like a TED talk or something, because the stuff you're saying, I could, like, an audience would love this sort of stuff.
I've actually gone to a TEDx talk before.
Really?
And logistics were the only reason I didn't actually present that day, mainly because I wasn't feeling great and all these things, right? But no, I mean, I like talking about these things because I feel like they're relatable, right?
They're very interesting too.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I can stand on my own 2 feet and say, there is no excuse you can give me because I have done all of it, good and bad, and I can be honest with people, and and that's the thing, right? People like that; they like honesty.
I like stories too, and I really enjoyed listening to your
Very
story.
much so. Yeah,
Absolutely. It was absolute awesome interview to have you on here, and it was really nice for me, especially to have someone we got to talk about, game development in the community, which is something I'm really interested in and trying to get involved in as well myself. And for kind of a surprise for you and a gift for coming on and talking to us, I have a couple World of Warcraft time cards that I'm going to slide you for coming on the StartUps for you. Just
that's cool.
Slide that on over to you.
Oh, and if anybody, there's the GDX in Edmonton for people who live here. If there's anybody who are huge World of Warcraft fans, they haven't heard of this.
Audio stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where would they go to take a look at that?
Feel free. You can either YouTube search. My tag is mild-mannered Rootgar. But if the word Rootgar scares you, you can also just type in vanilla World of Warcraft audio story, and it'll come right up.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And we will have the link to his channel and both of these videos in our YouTube video that we'll put up for this, so people can slide on over and listen to those audio stories. I've listened to a couple minutes of both of them, and I can say firsthand that the nostalgia is real, and they've done an excellent job doing that.
Very proud of my voice actors.
Absolutely. You guys have done an awesome job. Well, that's all the time we've had today. Again, Robert, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for letting me chat.
This was a good episode, and hopefully when we do a public speaking one in the future, we'll have you back on.
Love
for
to have your
another episode.
expertise.
Cool.
Absolutely. Tolu is not with us today, but I'm sure you guys will be soothed by a good ebb and flow beat here in 3, 2, 1.
All right.
Cool.
This is Sweat, produced by Tolu Taught Me.